Alrighty. So, how much sexual contact each day, week, month, if any, is ideal to you? And what kind of sexual contact is ideal? How much contact? And if you're not met that minimum, how would you respond?
Okay, so first off, I would like to respond it this way. I would say that that's definitely something a partner and like you and your partner should definitely communicate like soon, just because I know sexual satisfaction and sexual frustrations are one of like the biggest conflicts that arise throughout long-term relationships. So I definitely think that you should definitely communicate with your partner especially if you're thinking about a long-term relationship. What you desire in a sexual relationship, like
Right.
if you're really into those I guess kinky things, if you're interested in what sexual sexual, I know one of the questions like what kind of sexual contact is ideal to you, and like how much do you want. I definitely think that explaining that to your partner and kind of figure out where you guys like lie between those scenarios is definitely very important within a long-term relationship, and is very important to talk about very soon.
Okay.
And if conflicts do arise, I think that communicating about it, saying, "Hey, this is what I want," and like trying to create so then there's no miscommunication within that.
Okay.
Like because I know consent is definitely very big within those situations.
Okay. Do you want to have children? How many? How soon? How do you feel about asking your partner about that and how soon?
I feel very comfortable in asking that, just because I'm the person who would think that if I'm very interested in a long-term relationship with my partner, that is probably one of the very first things I would ask of my partner. Just because for me, I do want children in the future and I do want to start a family. That's one of the biggest things I envision for myself. So finding a partner who's interested in that and finding a partner who's kind of, I guess, agreeing with you on that situation is kind of very important for you, because let's say you do want children or your partner doesn't want children, or vice versa, you don't want it and your partner does. That does create conflicts. Even if you guys agree on one scenario, truly and deeply in the long run, one partner is not going to be overall happy about that.
Right.
You know?
Okay. And I guess would you also consider talking about having children naturally, or if other methods are acceptable, like adoption or?
Yes, I think that for me, I'm always open to communication. I feel like it's better to like tell your partner what you think, even if it could be uncomfortable, or even if it could be something that's, I guess, very like could detrimental to the relationship. I feel like being honest and being truthful is one of the things. So if let's say your partner or you are infertile or can't have children naturally, or just that you guys just can't have children naturally, and I think that talking about alternative ways is definitely an option. And I feel like for that situation, when that situation comes, at least bringing up the subject to your partner should be at least one of the things you talk as soon as possible.
Gotcha. How well do you manage money? Do you think that would be something that would be easy to bring up in knowing that person for a short while, or how do you think about that?
I believe out of the other topics, the topics we just discussed, I think out of this one, the managing money would probably be the easiest topic to bring up in terms of comfortability, like being comfortable in talking about it. Because I feel like, long run, you definitely want to like know your partner's spending habits, or let your partner know what you like to spend. Like, do you live an expensive lifestyle? Do your partner live an expensive lifestyle? Do you want to live frugal? How do you want to decide upon that? And I feel like managing money is definitely one of the most important things in a family and a long-term successful relationship. So definitely that would be, I think, maybe the number one thing you bring up.
Okay.
That's the most comfortable.
Why do you feel like it's the most comfortable so far?
Because out of like, I guess there's always like a stigma between sexualities. There's always a stigma between having kids and not having kids. But like money wise, there's no like, I guess, stigma between that. There's no it's not uncomfortable to bring up the idea that, hey, if I want to have a long-term relationship with you, or if you want to have a long-term relationship with your partner, the idea of spending money and like saving money in the long run it isn't, in my opinion specifically, it isn't uncomfortable. I think it's pretty comfortable to talk about it, because it shows, hey, how dedicated you are to the subject and of a long-term relationship.
Okay. The next question to consider would be, what are your thoughts on monogamy and polyamory? How soon and comfortable would you be discussing that with somebody you're dating?
Yeah, okay. So that might be maybe a later topic, but definitely something we should discuss soon as well. Because for me, I'm more into the monogamy aspects of things. So like, if my partner, I think a lot of the idea comes around trust and relationship building. But so discussing the idea of monogamy and polyamory is kind of definitely something we also should talk about. But it would be a little bit more uncomfortable for me to bring it up than, let's say, like managing money, just because of the idea of like finding out, maybe for me, finding out, hey, if you're interested in multiple relationships or bringing that in, that might be kind of like a deal breaker for me, especially. So I think that talking about it might be a little bit uncomfortable, but definitely something we should bring, because if, let's say, we have contrasting views on the subject, that might be like a relationship breaker and something that might hurt our relationship.
And so you would feel uncomfortable bringing it up because you wouldn't want the relationship to end? Or
yes,
why?
Maybe because it's my thing about like finding out the truth, that maybe we have different views on relationships such as monogamy and polyamory. But I definitely think we should talk about that in the long run for sure, but it would be a little bit more uncomfortable than, let's say, like finding your partner's sexual habits.
Do you also feel like it would make the relationship from that point on more complicated?
Yes, most definitely.
Okay. How do you feel about couples counseling? So would you discuss this to your partner and, looking forward, you saying, well, maybe we should always just go to counseling just to do it as a checkup?
Yes. So couples counseling, I think out of all of the things we discussed before, I mostly mentioned that we should definitely talk about things sooner, those views sooner rather than later.
Uh-huh.
And for couples counseling, I like to agree on the point where we should talk about it not sooner. I feel like for couples counseling, it should be used as a last resort. I feel like if we come into a conflict or if we come into an idea that we don't agree on something, we as a partner, as a couple, should kind of solve these issues within ourselves before bringing outside influences. Does that make sense?
Okay, so that's how you feel about it. But as far as like, you would feel comfortable having that conversation with your partner,
I would
saying,
yes,
no, we don't need to. However, whatever your position is, you would feel comfortable talking about it. You wouldn't feel like hesitant or worried. Oh, it's gonna complicate the relationship.
Hesitant about couples counseling, or hesitant about talking about the situation?
Talking about couples counseling.
Okay. I would feel a little bit uncomfortable because that in my opinion means that our relationship can't be fixed within ourselves, and I think maybe it might be a trust breach. But that's why I think that before we should do couples counseling, we should maybe talk about the situation first, try to hash things out between ourselves before we get any outside influences such as couples counseling.
Right.
I always think that couples counseling should be used as a last resort if we cannot solve it ourselves. If like my partner and I, or like someone I trust, that we can't just fix it within ourselves, we might have to go to couples counseling. Yes.
Right, but I take it that you're okay with discussing that, like
yes.
discussing. Hey, like when you're dating, you're going on a date,
mm-hmm.
and you're hanging. Yeah, you're dating, and so you tell the partner, well, I think we should. What do you think about couples counseling? Would you bring up that topic, and would you bring it up sooner than later? To discuss that with the partner.
Personally, I personally think I would not bring it as soon as. Usually, I would think I most likely would encourage the idea of talking to my partner about it. I personally value the idea of talking to my partner rather than couples counseling, just because I maybe feel a little bit uncomfortable with couples counseling as like a sooner idea to solve the problem.
Okay.
I think maybe using couples counseling is a way out of this thing instead of like solving it between my partner and I. So in terms of having the idea of couples counseling, I agree with that. But using it very soon to solve issues, I think that it should be only used as a last resort.
Gotcha. Okay. And then lastly, would you sign a prenuptial agreement? And not asking you if you would or wouldn't, I'm asking, would you want to discuss that with your partner? And would you want to discuss it with them soon? If not, and you wanted to wait till longer, it's like, how much longer, and why would you want to wait to talk about that?
Yes. Bringing up the idea of a prenup for a long-term relationship, I would definitely feel comfortable talking about that, because we understand that if I find someone who's interested in a long-term relationship, I definitely want to find out a way. Hey, if things don't work out, we have our own separate things. I'm not trying to find someone who leeches off me or I leech off them if our relationship doesn't work out. So definitely discussing a prenup would probably be for me very comfortable to discuss. And I think as sooner or later, which one would I choose? I would definitely choose sooner, because waiting till last minute, or waiting till, let's say you're already married or you're in a long-term relationship,
right,
and you didn't sign a prenup, or you did sign a prenup without discussing the idea with your partner, that might be kind of very treading like dangerous waters, in my opinion, just because I value communication. I value what my partner thinks of that as well, because we want to communicate and like try to come with a compromise when we're going through these conflicting situations.
Okay, and so just as a quick recap, going through these questions, which are the ones that you are comfortable talking about, and which are the ones that you are not comfortable talking about? And that doesn't mean like you'll never talk about it, but it just means you just don't really want to. It makes you feel uncomfortable.
Gotcha.
So
I'll probably talk about the ones that are very comfortable for me. Number one that just comes out of my mind is managing money. Of course, I think with every relationship, managing money is firsthand. If you have conflicting lifestyles and the way you spend your money, that's definitely a red flag in terms of relationships. So I think managing money is definitely something that you should definitely talk about, and I feel very comfortable. In fact, that would probably be the number one thing I would first talk about. And then another thing that I'll probably say that's very comfortable in talking about is the children aspect.
Okay, that makes sense.
I think that personally, it's natural for some people to want children and others to not want children. And the sooner you can find out if your partner wants children or not is a very good indicator of, hey, who I should start my relationship with, or who should I pursue a long-term relationship. So I think those two are what I'm pretty
comfortable with.
And then what I am like a little uncomfortable with is the monogamy and polyamory.
And would you say
on that.
Is that your most?
That's definitely. Let me look at it again.
Because you have.
Yes, I think for me that's probably the most uncomfortable for me, just because I have very strong views on one subject, and like if my partner has contrasting views on the other idea, then finding a way to solve that issue might be uncomfortable for me, just because I think because I want if I do value a long-term relationship with that person, knowing that I have contrasting views might be like a red flag for us.
Gotcha. So it's like the other questions beforehand, how well do you manage money, or do you want kids? Those are like immediate red flags, and it's just like you can I don't think it's gonna work out. But if they like agree with you with managing money, they agree with you with a couple of others, not all of them, but they agree with you with more of those. But then you find out they're polyamorous or they're monogamous, whichever one you want or don't want. It's that you feel like that's still a red flag, but it's less of a concern to you compared to money, where money you can easily say, oh no, that's it, or you know in your mind, okay, this relationship's not going to work. But then with the polyamory and monogamy, it's more of like
it's not
it
clear
could work, but
yes. And it's also something that like you can understand that it may be hard to fix, and I think that's probably the biggest reason why it's the most uncomfortable to me, because it's something new to me. I think personally the values of like managing money and having kids or whatnot is a more of a traditional view. It's something that you can decide yes or no pretty quickly, like you mentioned. But having that idea of monogamy and polyamory is kind of more of a, that might be contrasting, and that might be a red flag for you, but you still want to find a way to, like, I guess, solve it. Because whereas if you have a different lifestyle in terms of money, or your partner has conflicting views on whether or not they want kids, that's already something you can say yes or no to. You can be like, no, I really don't agree with that, and I know this is not going to work out like you mentioned in the long run. But having the monogamy and polyamory aspects is kind of it's a new thing. I'll say that. That's why it's the most uncomfortable.
Gotcha. Okay.